Medicare recently announced some possible new rules that would govern how Medicare plans are advertised. And here to talk with us about that is Jae Oh, author of Maximize Your Medicare. Jay, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Bob.
It's a pleasure, Jay. So, can you walk us through these proposed rules?
Sure, actually, the rule is a final rule at this point, meaning that all participants in Medicare space will be affected for the upcoming annual election period, which will begin formally on October 7th, but the publicity and the way that they are marketed actually begins on October 1st. Basically, what has happened is the government, the CMS, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, have been concerned about the way that Medicare Advantage plans and Part D plans, Medicare plans, are marketed to the Medicare population. This year being the year that more people will turn 65 than any other. You can understand that people have a lot of fatigue. Consumers have a lot of fatigue over the mail, over commercials, which seem to be ongoing. So let me just first say a couple of things. That Medicare fraud is a thing, that is a real issue, that it creates waste and a loss of a lot of money and obviously stress on the behalf of the consumers. So one of those measures that I want to say even before the rule is that you should not be receiving phone calls at your house to market Medicare Advantage and Part D plans. That should not be occurring unless you have given specific permission to do so. And even then, the phone calls should be recorded by the person who calls you. So all of those rules have been in place. Now, part of that is the way that insurance professionals, myself included, are compensated for helping persons, guiding people to enrollment in a particular Medicare plan. In order to do so, what they have done, what the CMS has done, they have actually increased the amount paid directly to insurance producers, licensed professionals. That actually will increase for those persons who are new to Medicare. Now, the issue is that you can no longer, beginning in a few months, call up one of these numbers and just be randomly attached to an agent. So whether you know it or not, when you send in your the survey card, don't lose your Medicare benefits, etc., or you're making a phone call in response to a TV advertisement, that in the past has been distributed to possibly one, possibly many different parties. And in fact, the location you're calling may not be and ultimately talking to may not be person directly related to the person, the party that made the commercial. In other words, there is a distribution of this information. And this concerns me personally, privately, and professionally to a great degree because it leaves the consumer in a place where they're not sure who they're talking to. Now, that's not to accuse the person that you're talking to of wrongdoing. I'm not saying that at all. It is just that this entire process makes consumers uncomfortable. The new rule basically is looking to close down some of these peculiar uh, details that I just mentioned. It must sound to a consumer like some very, very convoluted attachment method, but it goes to show you that the consumers are largely unaware of how Medicare works, right? and as a result, not aware of benefits that can be included inside of Medicare Advantage plans, which can be valuable to the consumer. So I don't, not trying to say that all of marketing and information that you're so good to have me with you, for example, is useful. I do think it, I'm committed to that idea. It is just that the consumer, when they are calling to get this information now, will probably not have as much information thrown at them. And so as a result, my one concern would be that consumers who are underinformed about Medicare don't get the information that they may find very valuable. The flip side is that the pressure is now on the carrier as well. So we've discussed already the fact that the carriers are on ongoing pressure, meaning that risk adjustment and other things, that mechanics that occur behind the scenes, which are very complicated, just got more complicated because of the fact that some of the money that was going to be going into plans is in fact going to the insurance producer, the person who is responsible for guiding you. So as a result, the carriers are going to have another set of tough choices, meaning that they are trying to promote their plans to increase membership, to shed light on these benefits, which can be helpful to consumers, and yet once again being challenged on the number of dollars that they can allocate. We've discussed this idea of an allowance. Now that allowance just went down by $100 for a person new to Medicare. Tough stuff.
It is tough stuff. Because we want to give folks some actionable advice, what do you recommend that beneficiaries do or not do given these new rules?
Well, I'm the very biased as an author of a book, Bob, right? So, I mean, in other words, I have a very, very specific path by which people can get objective information, right? Uh, that said, and that's maximizeyourmedicare.com if I wasn't completely clear. Anyway, what I would say is that you can expect commercials and advertisements that I didn't say that they were going to cease entirely. But what I would say is that remember that there's no reason for you to give out any private identifying information unless you are very sure of the identity of who you are talking to. And what I tell people as a very simple guideline is ask the person their name and their NPN number. The NPN number is a unique identifier number, one per person. You need to have license. You need to then have extra permissions. But it starts from this one central number, which is National Producer Number NPN. In fact, in every video, in every one of my editions on the newsletter, I literally have this number attached to it because of the fact that I feel professionally responsible for guidance that I provide on a private level. And so that people understand this is a unique number, unique to me. That way, if you're dealing with someone who I have not met, who I've not seen, and just dealing on the phone, for example, that this information will be readily available because of the fact that that on our end, we are so highly regulated.
So in some cases, someone that you go to for Medicare advice might not have that number. If you, for instance, go to your local senior center and talk to the local Shine or SHIP representative, they're unlikely to have such a number per se.
Yes, that is, of course, the one of the challenges of the Medicare system is the fact that when someone approaches myself, for example, and us here, we have a fiduciary responsibility to people. We just presume that to always be the case. And when you go to a location for for example, SHIP that you mentioned, and different states will have their own version or rename them. Florida is called Shine, for example. That is not to say that the information given is wrong. I am not going to say that. In fact, I have worked alongside many lives ago with the head of the group training nationally SHIP, which is Medicare Rights Center. So that is not the issue. The issue is as you know, Bob, after we've met so many times, is that this is ultimately a math of money, financial health and wealth combination, and there are ripple effects not only about out-of-pocket costs here, but there are all of the other topics we discussed. IRMA, for example, the APTC, if just prior to Medicare, what do you do about spouse? And the issue is that even those locations, state-sponsored locations, is for Medicare alone. And the reality is that it is very rare, in fact, that a person just only deals only with Medicare by itself, as if it's its own island with no other islands and with no other weather pattern or to deal with. That is very rare from a practical point of view.
So in terms of the end consumer, one is becoming educated, Maximize Your Medicare, obviously being one resource. You mentioned Medicare Rights Center, perhaps another resource that people could take advantage of. Um, any thoughts about sometimes Medicaid beneficiaries might call the insurer directly and get connected with a customer service rep. That person will have a number as well, I would imagine, yes.
No doubt about that. So what a statement that I don't make in any of our conversations, my YouTube channels, newsletter, no matter what, is that the likelihood that a carrier is knowingly speaking or writing an untruth is as close to zero as possible. Right? In other words, the, that is different, that said, with whether or not that is the question or the information you require to make a decision. So there is no question, for example, if I call carrier X and I talk to the salesperson there, that person will have a license, that person will know that company's plans very well. I have very little doubt about that, to be candid. That said, that representative at that specific carrier is not allowed to compare to another carrier's plan. They're not allowed. So it does make it this combination because since there are so many plans and options, nuances within plans, that the details are difficult to find, can be a challenge, but can be done.
So my understanding is that CMS published this release on their website, so someone who wants to do a deeper dive into uh, the actual dot the I's and cross the T's of the news release can find it on the CMS website.
Yes, and that's true, Bob. And I will also be providing the link to you so that you can post it on the text below the video for people to read themselves. And then there's the legalese language, which is currently in draft form, I believe. It is a whopping 1,700 pages, to give you an idea.
Bedtime reading.
I'll only be providing the the press release for consumers. They'll be thankful for that, I'm sure.
All right. So we covered a lot of ground. Anything we missed or bears reemphasizing that?
I think that what it is that reality is that Medicare is complicated commercial matter as well. And, we are not here to discuss what's fair or how the world should work. Rather, focused, and why I appreciate you so much, Bob, is the fact that we are focused on how the world actually works. And then what consumers can do, irrespective of net worth, educational level, background, etc. The reality is Medicare does treat everyone equally in the sense of the way that the rules work. as long as you understand them accurately. So appreciative of you, Bob.
Yeah, well, I'm grateful for you, as always, sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us. So thank you, Jay. Appreciate it.
My privilege.